Hello, Barry.
Hello. Bad collaborologist. Are you a sinner?
There's no such thing as sin.
How about error prone?
Sin just means without, right?
Yeah, it just means without being perfect, without zero mistakes.
Notice how quickly we get into religion, Barry.
Well, I mean, you're the one who knows that sin is the Latin word for something missing.
But that's not necessarily religion, though.
No, it's just that people adopt words because they need words. So without perfection is just without perfection. It's suboptimal. I did my thesis in optimization theory, which is trying to find ways of computing the optimum without approximating something that was suboptimal.
But then putting a value on it has been the religiosity of it.
Well, I mean, the value system is what you're optimizing for to maximize whatever you consider valuable, whether it's profit or eyeballs or whatever it is you're trying to maximize. That you just choose some metric that you want to get to the highest levels, like climbing a mountain. You want to get to the top, the highest elevation. So maybe the highest elevation of a mountain is not the most scenic spot. Often isn't. Might be above the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's sort of agnostic with respect to what the metric is that you're trying to extremize.
Okay.
Could be a trade-off of multiple things you care about. Pareto optimality.
So 9 hours ago, I posted Clarence Darrow. Do you recall seeing that?
No, I don't recall. Well, actually, 9 hours ago, I was asleep, so.
Okay. Let me see if I can share that.
Where did you post it? In
rock? Cosense making and deep rocking, yeah. So here's a very long link that gives it to you.
Oh, I see it. Can any rational person believe that the Bible is anything but a human document? Well, it's obviously written. It's written in human languages. Although in the New Testament, there's a number of books that they aren't really sure who the author was, because some of them were written down from oral traditions, but not by the original creator of the oral version.
Isn't it without question, though, that anybody who writes about Jesus lived centuries after him?
I think all of the New Testament books are written at least one or two generations after the time that they are reporting on. With a possible, well, then there were historians, not Bible books, but historians. What's the famous historian that I don't remember his name now, who wrote about events corresponding to the time? Because you have the Roman emperors. You had Pontius Pilate and whoever were the high-level civil leaders of the time, and they were written about.
And what about the lack of Roman records?
I don't know much about Roman history to say anything about that. I mean, a lot of the literature which survived is the like the Greek plays and things like that. But the entertaining literature is what survived. I don't know that academic literature. I mean, there was the great fire of the library. What was the library that burned down? Alexandria. A lot of the literature, a lot of the academic literature got lost in the great fire of the Library of Alexandria. So
at that time, were they already making copies, or were they still in the age of single copy books?
I think copying was hand. you had to transcribe copies. And
Sure, but were they doing it?
well, I'm pretty sure that people were making copies. It's just that whether the copies themselves survived or got lost. I mean, even a famous mathematician like Gauss, believe it or not, Gauss discovered the fast Fourier transform and even wrote it down, and his version of it survived, but it was so obscure and so arcane that it was lost to the academicians until after Cooley and Tukey independently rediscovered it in the 1960s, I think it was.
It was that late? Really?
Yeah, they discovered it was in the aftermath of the nuclear test ban treaty talks, where the problem was is that you wanted a way to reliably detect a nuclear test, and you could detect them if they were above ground, but the underground ones, you need to analyze seismic ripples to detect them, and they knew that you needed to do Fourier transforms to do that, but they didn't have
You're right.
efficient.
Man, you're verbatim citing Wikipedia then. 1805 Gauss, 1965 Cooley and Tukey.
Well, I'm quoting it not from Wikipedia, but from a YouTube video by Derek Muller.
I'm not saying you were, I'm saying you were as good as.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure where he got it from. I'm not sure who got it first, except that if you study the literature, it's in the literature because Derek Muller discusses it in a YouTube video that I was just watching this morning.
By the way, it cites in 1932 a guy named Frank Yates publishing his version, something called an interaction algorithm.
That I don't know about.
Oh, well, that's the Hadamard-Walsh transform.
Yeah, no. So the problem was the fast Fourier transform took an enormous number of computations, but it turned out many of them were redundant, that you had to do them for different frequencies of sine waves. But if you realize that you were redoing the same ones multiple times, then you needed to do them only once. And that was the basis for the fast Fourier transform.
Okay.
And Tukey had rediscovered that, not knowing that Gauss had done the same thing centuries earlier.
Okay. All right. Well, unless Josh has anything more to say about that, let me move on to the next one.
Oh, here's Josh. Yeah.
Here's the next one I sent. It's Chomsky's comment about the responsibility of intellectuals.
I know. Oh, there it is.
Where he says, it is the responsibility of intellectuals to speak the truth and expose lies.
Yeah, and then get shit on for doing that.
Well, that's the other part of it. That's Barry's corollary.
Well, I mean, it's not much. I wasn't the first one to discover it. But
that is your expression. Actually, no, your expression is, and thenceforth add the vexed and perplexed piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, vexed and perplexed is my coinage for being flummoxed by the difficulty of dispelling misconceptions. There are so damn many misconceptions which are popular and known to be misconceptions by the intelligentsia, but you can't. There's just, from a practical point of view, overthrowing them. I mean, they knew the Earth was round, but the flat Earth people just basically didn't. They only knew what they knew firsthand, and they didn't study the literature. They didn't do.
I ate today, therefore there is no global starvation. Right?
Yeah. Basically, very parochial awareness and not global awareness. This is where I think academics both excel and become exasperated. Discovering things from a global perspective, but not being able to spread the good news, the gospel, to the general population.
That's where we need people like Sagan.
Yeah, there were a number of people who were very good popularizers, but they also have to simplify stuff and turn them into narratives, which are digestible by the general public, even though they sometimes do a little disservice to the deep technical work. The use of metaphors, which are understandable but not quite true to the thing that they're a metaphor of. I mean, poets do that all the time.
This is where I ask you, how closely are you following the national thread about what's going on in politics?
That stuff drives me up the friggin' wall. I get these ads on YouTube for the political ads, and I can't click skip fast enough.
You caught the piece about the Arlington Cemetery, though, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a big story. NPR covered that story multiple times, and that I mean that's the kind of thing that just makes you want to throw up.
Well, I proposed this morning that be a new national holiday. When Trump dies,
When Trump dies. Well, I mean, they
we'll
keep
go
close
to his
every-
grave and start, taking selfies with their thumb up.
Yeah, ding dong, the witch is dead. Have that kind of a celebration. Yeah. I mean, people like that tend to have a relatively short time in the sun, but during their time in the sun, it's just, you just cringe or cringeworthy. And the cringeworthies, they have their time in the sun and they recur. They recur about every third generation or so.
Yeah. The sad part is it wouldn't happen, except that, quote unquote, the sun is all the various, followers he has that keep attention on the guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, and people love fiction stories where the villain is the starring character, the um, Hannibal Lecter. I mean, the Grinch. I mean, look at the popularity of stories where the main character is the villain. The Westerns with was it Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? The people love entertainment stories that the Joker and the Penguin. They love these stories with the superheroes and the supervillains. And actors love to play the villain. Most actors would rather play the villain than the good guy. They're more interesting characters. So, and in a Hollywood ending, the bad guy has to lose, but in real life and in real documentaries, it's not always a Hollywood ending where the good guy gets the bad guy gets the comeuppance. Cthulhu. Look at the popularity of monsters. The Japanese monster movies and sci-fi monsters and Krakens and Cthulhu's. People love that stuff. Halloween, horror movies, the chest bursters and Alien. I mean, if you're not a big fan of horror movies, it's a little bit hard to appreciate why people love these horror movies. The supernatural ogres and whatnot. Yeti. I was watching a model railroad video where somebody had a little Yeti figure standing next to the tracks and a little figurine of a Yeti. And just, it's just, it adds color. If you had just, somebody with a baby stroller, it wouldn't be a very interesting figure compared to a Yeti sauntering, alongside the railroad tracks.
Okay, so maybe that's another question that comes up as you speak. There's a line, it seems, between pure entertainment and adding entertainment in order to be able to deliver a message.
Absolutely. And that's something that I really wish I had a talent for, making academic stuff entertaining. There are very good academicians who are very entertaining presenters, but they're few and far between. A lot of academics are very dry and boring and unentertaining. They just the facts, ma'am. And they don't try to dramatize things. But there is a value to dramatization. It basically keeps people attending the story and not daydreaming away from it.
Well, it's a skill set because you don't want the entertainment to distract from the message, although
Exactly.
that's going to
This
be
is
based
why
on the viewer.
allegories and parables and fables, it's an art form to be able to write a piece of fiction that delivers some real insight into the science, but not so much misinformation that you don't get the science that's sort of hidden in the story. And I don't really understand how good writers figure that out, but they manage to somehow get to the sweet spot between dramatization and documentation reality.
Well, these are the nuances that I think I'm now drawn to. Yesterday, it was about untestable versus not tested. And today it's about entertainment versus entertainment to deliver a message.
Yeah, we don't like to be bored. And a lot of stuff really is repetitive, dull, and boring after the first few times. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and you kind of zone out. And it's difficult to maintain that keen level of attention and interest and intrigue.
Okay, so how about this? The willingness to actually say one is bored. I'll call that a character flaw, a personality defect.
Well, I tell you, as I age, I find things that I once found fascinating and intriguing. Now I've been there, done that, and the third, fourth, fifth time around, it's like a popular song. There was a feature this morning on NPR about popular songs that you grow to hate. What's the worst? This is the question. What's the worst popular song that you just can't stand anymore or never could stand? And a lot of them are songs that were popular, but they outgrew their fascination or amusement.
But that's not boredom, though. That's not boredom.
That's a different thing. But the point is that your positive valence attitude goes to neutral, to like, who cares, to I don't want to hear that crap anymore. I've heard it already. I got the message. Stop repeating it. It's like these political ads. The first time you hear a political story, okay, but the 17th time you say, you're wasting my time. I don't want to have to attend to the same nonsense again. Music is the same way, theme and variation. You can't repeat the same theme over and over again. Each time it has to be a somewhat interesting variation. And that's a trick.
But it's an intent to actually put a word like boredom on that experience. Especially when your experience is something you can choose.
Yeah, well, sing songs. I mean, children's music is sing-songy, and adults don't like sing-songy music. It's too predictable. If it's predictable, it's boring because you already know what's going to happen.
But I'm saying you have choice in that.
Yeah, you basically
can choose to consume it, or you can actually choose to change it.
Yeah, and that's the point, is that you'll change the channel.
Right, there you go. So why then stay on that same channel and just say, I'm bored?
Oh, the problem is that what was it that Newton Minnow says, vast wasteland? All the TV channels were very low quality and not worth the investment of time and attention.
Get off TV then. Find something.
Well, and then people got on the social networks, which were very interesting at first. Now the social networks are dull and boring and uncreative and unoriginal. Everything basically kind of has its time in the sun and then becomes It's like reruns. How many times can you watch a rerun or
Wait, 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 wait,
variation
wait,
of a
wait,
rerun?
wait, 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 wait. That's, in my view, that's too simplistic. Would you go out into your neighborhood park, and if you've walked there 100 times before, would today then you say, I'm bored, this is the same old park? Would you do that?
Well, parks being part of nature are seasonal and they change. They're not the same every day. If you went into a scenic railroad museum and it was the same every time because it's a model that doesn't change, that's not the same as real nature, which really does change week to week, month to month, and year to year. So they're not the same all the time. But it's something that's synthetic could be basically, like a rerun doesn't this when you watch an episode of Gunsmoke and then you watch the same episode 2 years later, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes in the story. And that's the difference between a synthetic
But
model
if you
and
chose to put it on, then
what
why would you choose that and then say you're bored?
back in the day there were only 3 channels and that was it. In the summer they did reruns. That's all you
Very,
had.
very, 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 very. I don't think my point is getting across. Josh, you wanted to say something?
I was stretching, but we've had this conversation before, but I was just
It's
stretching.
boring.
I was actually just stretching, but I mean, I think you're getting to a point, but I'm waiting to hear it. So I
I'm
see
getting
where
to a
you're going,
point
Sam,
in
and I see
that
where Barry's going.
the boredom aspect is a lack of imagination on the person who is saying, I am bored.
Yeah. And the point is that I used to be very creative in my younger days. I'm not so creative anymore.
Rather than say creative, can you say receptive?
Oh, the thing is that when I look for something to receive, I say, oh, I've already seen that before.
Yeah, see, that's a problem. That's a problem, Barry, because I notice you respond very, very quickly. So you respond to the familiar points that map into something that's already in your head,
Yeah.
but you're
Tell me
not
something I don't already
exploring the
know.
parts that may be different.
Yeah. If I say, tell me something,
Barry, you're doing the same thing right now.
if I say, tell me something I don't already know, you have to know what I already know before you can figure something I don't already know. And that becomes
No, 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 no,
harder.
no, 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 no. What you're saying is you don't choose to assume that there's something new to be discovered. You're saying because you know that these 3 points are familiar, the rest of it is all familiar, therefore it's nothing new, therefore it's boring.
Let me tell you something. These Saturday, Sunday sessions are very repetitive.
You're doing it again.
They are, but that's real. That's an
So
observation.
why do you
They're very
come? Why do you
repetitive.
choose to come?
Because there's nothing else to go to on Saturday and Sunday morning. I guess I could go to
Okay.
Sunday
Thank you,
services with
Barry.
my friends.
Okay.
I mean, I could go out
Now,
for.
Josh, you wanted to say something now.
Oh, I mean, instead of going through that same diatribe, we all know that sometimes we get hardwired in our minds into the same grooves, and you have to change the record. But if you've changed okay, do you understand what I mean by that? Neuroplasticity, your brain
I know what you
repeats.
said.
We're
I'm just
creatures of habit.
expressing.
We're creatures of habit, is what I'm saying. And in those habits, we go through the same neural pathways, which is, oh, that's interesting. Let me study that. Okay, now I know that. Next. And then you go to the next thing. Oh, that's interesting. Let me learn as much as it interests me in that. But some people like to learn even further into that or flip the script on what they know about the thing that they learned, and they find the most mundane thing interesting, but someone else doesn't. But they both study the same subject. So, in other words, if I said to Barry, hey, how much do you know about salsa dancing? Oh, well, I've seen it on TV. It's pretty cool. Saw it once in a park. And yeah, they move their hips and they go ding, 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 ding. Yeah, whatever. It's salsa dancing. I know what it is. I know what it is. But I say, Barry, have you used a güero? Have you ever used the clave? Have you ever moved your hips to the rhythm? Have you ever heard complicated African rhythms that created salsa that are complex with different time signatures? I don't probably, I don't know. I went to a few dances when I was younger. I danced with this hot Latina girl and we made out. I'm just saying there's different nuances and levels to knowledge and to experience. And some people want to further into that. I know people that dedicated their whole lives just to salsa dance for 50 years because they love it. And rhythms are so complex with the xylophone. Holy mackerel. It's so, and that's just one example, but you could go through that to etymologists studying ants. You know, how much you know about ants? I see them in the park. They get the stuff and they bring it down the hole and they build complex hole structures. But to study that, how many different types of ants are there in the world? Oh, there's over 100,000 species. I didn't know that. I'm just saying it's what you want to do personally to create connections. And then it's about relationships. Like, how much have you studied the difference between ancient cultures, slime mold, ant colonies, and bird and butterfly migration? And how, do you see where I'm going with that?
Well, that was my
Am I
point
making
about
sense, or am
intent,
I just,
right?
what's
It's
that?
about that was my point about intent, about your
Intent and
choice.
intent, curiosity, and when to end the curiosity, when to say enough is enough. I've studied butterflies enough. Like, come on, man. How much more are you going to tell me about butterflies? What do you want to show me, a chrysalis I haven't seen? I've seen all the fucking chrysalises, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And the more you absorbed in a lifetime, the harder it is to find something novel. I mean, when people who write novels are trying to write a story that is novel, and it becomes harder to write novels in the 21st century because you've got, millennia of stories that people have already, done and redone to death.
I think the real question is, what is novel when you're Sam Hahn or Joshua Bridge or Barry Court? What's novel at that point?
I mean, they
When you,
introduced breakdancing in the Olympics, and people watched breakdancing because it was novel. And these were world-class people doing athletic breakdancing, but it wasn't traditional, and that was the whole point. Is they wanted to introduce new sporting activities, which were not classical ones that people got tired of watching year after year.
so what's novel to you, Barry? Is there anything novel?
Um, that's the problem. I'm having a difficult time finding novel things to attend to that I can follow. They're not so complicated that I can't follow them, that are interesting and worthwhile and not repetitive. And it becomes harder and harder. And partly it's because my information processing capacity is diminishing with age. So I watch people do puzzle solving on YouTube, and some of them I can't follow them. It's the logic is so intricate that I can't. I have to pause the video and stare at it to see, what they just, why what they just said follows logically from where they are. And so it's difficult to get the pleasure out of things that are either dull, boring, repetitive, or so arcane and complex that you can't follow them. Where's that sweet spot? Those sweet spots sort of diminishing.
I gotcha.
Not,
Can I push on this a little bit? I'm
No.
really curious. Is boredom a bad thing?
I think it's inevitable. I don't know about.
Wait. No, that's not the question. Is it a bad thing?
If you're an entertainer and you're boring, yes, it's a bad thing because you're not
No,
going to get
no. I'm talking about you, Barry. To feel bored, is that a bad thing? Is that a bad state?
I would rather not be bored.
Okay, so you would choose to not be bored. And you're right now saying it's difficult to choose something that does not bore you. That's what I'm.
It's harder and harder to find things that I can attend to, find interesting, and novel and worth attending to. It's harder and harder to find stuff that's not boring.
And yet, a few minutes ago, you reaffirmed that no, walking in nature doesn't seem to bore you the same way.
Well, first of all, I don't walk in nature very much anymore.
But you don't want to be bored, and you know that doesn't bore you, so why not choose that?
Because when I lived in California, there was a park that was a block away. Where I live now, there's not a park that's a block away. I've got to get in the car and drive to a bike trail. And the bike trail, I mean, I used to do, you know, 10 years ago, I used to do that regularly. Now I don't anymore.
But that's a degree of how much you dislike boredom versus the inconvenience of travel, right? So if you
And
really
also,
dislike boredom,
and also because in the old days, I could go walking for an hour and that was fine. I had the energy and I could hold my pee. And as I age, and number one, don't have the energy to walk for an hour. And number two, I can't hold my pee for an hour. The reasons why, and I've walked that same trail is, you know, there's not that much new stuff because it's an historic trail that they intentionally don't change it because it goes back to the Civil War or the Revolutionary War.
all right. So not that I'm going to get a yes out of this, but let me at least bring something to your attention. It probably is not going to be the same thing, but you know, there's a whole group of people, in fact, many people who take very high quality video cameras and go walking in nature or walking wherever, like in
Kayla does it.
trail or
Kayla does it.
what?
Kayla takes a video camera when she goes mushing with her
Right,
dog.
but I think that's for like 2 seconds at a time, right? But I'm talking about people that actually do this for hours and will just let people along with some of their walks. Now, I know it doesn't give you the sense of smell, it doesn't give you the pacing, it doesn't give you the thud on your shoes, etc. But at least it gives you the scenery. So I was wondering if that might actually be of interest to you in any way.
Well, I have watched videos of people traveling. Some years ago, I discovered that they would put cameras on locomotives and give you a video.
I'm looking for an answer. I'm looking for an answer. Okay. I mean, is this something
I'm giving you an answer.
Tried?
Just because you're bored with my answer, just say, Barry, I'm bored with your answer.
I'm not bored with your answer. I was wondering how it related to my question.
I'm answering it.
Okay.
I have watched some videos. One of them that I found very interesting the first few times was putting a video on a locomotive and watching a cab ride, you know, through some scenic railway scenery. But after I watched a number of cab rides, I said, okay, now I'm saturated. I can't watch, you know, I'm not so fascinated that I can spend an hour every day watching a cab ride video. I'll watch one for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe on a model railroad or something like that. So, but their fascination, I mean, they put cameras on drones and you can see a drone flying with a camera. And those were interesting because they were novel, but now they're not so novel anymore. And it's harder and harder to find a drone video where the content, not the technology, but the content is still worth the ride. When we were kids, you would go for a ride in the car with your father in the local, you know, neighborhood, and that was interesting because you couldn't walk that far as you could drive. Now I wouldn't go out in the car and drive around the neighborhood. That when I first moved here, I did it a few times, but after that, what's the point? First of all, I'm driving, so I can't really, you know, look around. So things basically, things that were once cool simply lose their charm. They do. Same is true of conversations. Conversations, they get repetitive. They keep going over the same old, same old. After a while, I go, this is the same old, same old.
Can I ask you a Steve Covey question?
Steve Covey, I don't know who that is.
Another
Seven
one.
Habits of Highly Effective People.
What would you like your tombstone to read?
Well, I'll tell you what, what I wrote on Facebook, the story of my life is that I don't know how to tell the story of my life.
That's a good tombstone cover, actually. If I was walking through a cemetery and I saw that, I go, story of my life is I don't know how to tell this. Who is this Barry Court guy? He couldn't tell a story. What's going on?
I tend to do dry humor on social networks, but sometimes the humor is so dry that people don't even get it.
Well, not to change the subject. I mean, if we're gonna, the only thing novel that happened to me recently was I went to a car show by mistake yesterday. I went to the post office and they were holding a vintage. It was mostly just the interesting cars from the neighborhood, and they were quite interesting. There was 1930s all the way to 19 to modern cars that were just really interesting. Three-wheel
Yeah.
Polaris vehicles to Ford. The one that caught my eye the most was a Ford Fairlane 1959 that had 11 motors that were DC, that were actual electric motors to make the hood go down, but the motors were for the clamps and the way it pulled the hood underneath and then clamped it over. So it was like a metal hood that came off, was a convertible metal hood on a Ford Fairlane. I found that quite fascinating. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, really old cars had side covers that you lifted up and access the engine from the side. They were basically like tunnel covers.
Yeah, there was a lot of ingenuity and a lot of innovation in this one car. It was quite. I've seen I've seen cars that drive in the ocean. I've seen a lot of different things, but this cover was. They took a lot of time to figure out how to pull it back, clamp it down, seal it, make it good for the wind, and then have it come back up. And it was actually a metal cover.
Yeah.
It wasn't a.
Yeah.
Which I had never seen. Maybe in your day that was commonplace, but I'd never seen a metal cover like that. All the covers I saw were fabric.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when I would go to an auto show or a car show or some kind of a show. And now now on YouTube, you can go to all kinds of shows on YouTube. And I'll go to them, but there's really no, first of all, there's no travel investment. You're just find one and turn it on. And after a while, you've viewed half a dozen of them in a week, and you go, okay, I'm saturated. There's not that much
Yeah.
now.
Um, Depends how much I mean, I guess you studied all the cars. I had not seen a lot of these cars. Like the new Corvette, I'd seen it parked, but no one ever let me look under the hood and go inside of it.
Yeah. So
Have you seen the new Corvette, by the way, Barry?
I didn't even know they're still making them.
I didn't
Nobody around
know.
here. Nobody
I
around
didn't know
here
either.
knows. No, I mean, I remember once I saw a car. Uh, I think it was a Boxster, and I could read the the logo on the trunk. And I go, I have never seen that car before, but I could read it was a Boxster. And then I got home and I looked up, what's a Boxster? And I don't remember now. It
Yeah.
wasn't a BMW, so I can't remember what it was. But it was a car I'd never seen before. It was, I mean, cars, almost all the cars that are made in Japan look alike, even regardless of manufacturer. They look so similar. Like I have a Honda Civic, and I had to take my car in for periodic servicing the other day. So I'm sitting in the room waiting for them to work on my car, and he's got a couple of cars on the lot. And I look at one, I said, that looks just like mine. But it wasn't mine, and it wasn't even the same make. And it was so similar to, and in the parking lot, you go, these two cars, this looks like my car's twin brother. It's not even the same make. They're so similar looking. You have to find some small detail. I have to look at the license plate because I have a Massachusetts green license plate, which is the old color scheme, and there aren't any left anymore. So if I would say, oh, look for the car with the green license plate, that's mine, because all the rest of them are red nowadays and have been for decades.
Yeah, I purposely put some weird screws on the back of my license plate to know my car because it's so similar to all the cars out there.
I mean, people
but
have these beepers that will beep their car from a distance so they can find it in the parking lot. And
yeah,
I even have dreams where in the dream I park my car and then I can't remember where I parked it and can't get back to wherever it was. And those dreams are based on real life because you go into a big parking lot, you go, where did I park my car? They
well,
all
you
look
got one
alike.
of these iWatches now, right? Didn't you say?
Yeah.
They come with, there's a feature on the watch that'll, when you stop in your car, it will know that you were moving at certain, and it will tell you where your car's parked.
Oh, that I never found that option. I'll have to see if it's there.
Yeah, you
Of
probably
course,
have to hook it
nowadays,
into an iPhone to do that.
the thing is, nowadays, I mean, I go to the grocery store, the parking lot's not that big.
Yeah,
I went to the T has a multi-level parking garage. Then I have to remember where I parked my car.
yeah, I'm enjoying. I just for just because it's fun to have on in the background. I put Seinfeld on just as a background thing, and it's fun watching all the tropes and the problems have been solved through technology. So most of the episodes were because of communication or whatever social thing, like they didn't know how to do this thing, and all of that has changed with the technologies now. So it's fun to watch. In the future, people are just going to be posting about everything they feel, you know. And then sure enough, we got social media. Like they didn't have that back in that time.
Yeah. Well, there was a headline this morning. I saw a guy with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, who basically couldn't talk except his primary caregiver could figure out what he was saying. And now he's got some gizmo that reads his brain waves and provides a synthetic voice that is as as good an interpretation as his personal caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Did you see the latest on the AI creating Doom in real time, the video game Doom? So it's a real processy where you're playing the game, but it's continuously updating the game as you're playing it.
okay, so it's not repetitive like the real game is, not pre-programmed.
Not pre-programmed, it's programmed on the fly. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that was kind of interesting, that idea of on the fly programming.
Yeah, so software that games that are not pre-written, pre-scripted programs, but programs that can react like improvisational sketches can react, and that's a new phenomenon that's emerging and improving. Although I can't say that I've played any of those games because they're not cheap and you need a high-end computer often to play them.
Not the old style Doom that they just did. You can play that one right away.
Well, yeah,
You-
that dates back what 30 years or something.
Somewhere around there, a little more maybe.
Yeah, in the 90s, I think. Yeah, I haven't played too many computer
The
games.
first version, what was it called? Wolf something, Wolfenstein, I think it was called.
I mean, my friends who still play those games are playing very, very hard, uh, like World of Warcraft style combat games, and where the strategies are very, very intricate, and I would never be able to. I wouldn't enjoy them, and I don't enjoy combat games anyway.
But Matt, I mean, so software, we're used to getting updates, and then you're playing or you're using the application. You have to pause it. You got to download the new one, start playing it. But if it's doing that on the fly, so
Right.
as you're using the software, it's improving in real time. That's kind of interesting.
And you don't have loading screens. I mean, the bane of people who do Let's Plays are the loading screens when they transition from one scene to the next, and you got to wait 20 seconds during the loading screen. And they get tired of having to loss of continuity of the game.
Yeah. Well, I did I do a test every time I go into town. When I come back with the Tesla car, I test.
Did you just freeze? Yep. Joshua just froze. Wait for
the
him to unfreeze.
a circle.
You froze for 20 seconds. You
Am I
said you
back?
came back with a Tesla car and then it froze for 20 seconds.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. There's a roundabout at the end of the driveway.
Yeah.
and I have to go past my driveway that goes in, go up to the top. It does a circle and then come back and go up the driveway. But at the top, there's no markings on the sides. There's just driveways leaving off of that little circle
Mhm.
because it's in the mountains. There's not real markings, you know, there's no street signs and sort of things.
Right.
And the car has to figure out how to do that circle, but there's an edge where it can't detect because there's no markings on the edge of the circle. And so sometimes it cuts it too fast and gets stuck. And every time it gets stuck, I got to turn it off, back it up, and then go. And yesterday was the first time where it moved to the right and then did the circle so it could make it. And it still got stuck. It was right, you know, too close to the edge. And it thought I watched the car do this twice yesterday in real time. Stop, look around, think about it, decide if it's going to go. Is it going to back up? It doesn't. I don't think it has the ability yet to back up. It is programmed soon to be able to back up, but right now it doesn't have that capability. And it decided in real time. It inched forward and said, "I got this," and then just went. And I watched it think twice. It did that turning onto the street. It got stuck in a parking lot area and it saw a little, it was not marked at all. It was a dirt road out of the parking lot back onto the street. And it discovered that and it discovered the roundabout area. So to me, that was a big, big improvement in the
Discovery
technology of the car.
learning, yeah, the discovery learning activities are very interesting. When the challenge of the discovery is realistic, it's not trivial and it's not impossible.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to craft a discovery learning activity where the median participant will successfully complete the discovery in a realistic amount of time. That's hard to
Yeah.
do with the
It,
puzzle.
it's,
You know,
I watched the device look around, think about what it wanted to do, make a decision to do it, stop and go, wait a second, I don't think that's the right decision. Wait, we should do this, make the decision, do it. Nope, that's not the right decision. And then, wait, I know how to get out of this. And then it left and just took off. And the feeling of that, I don't know how to explain it, but cars aren't supposed to drive themselves.
it's
Like
getting stuck when you paint yourself into a corner, and before you've painted yourself in the corner, you realize it and manage to leave yourself an out. That's non-trivial. I mean, I watch people who do fix-it videos and they make classic mistakes, and they make the same mistake more than once, and they know it's a mistake after they've made it. They go, "Oh, I did the same stupid mistake again." And on the fifth or sixth time, you know, they make sure that, you know, they're planning ahead far enough to not repeat the same mistake. But at some point when they stop making any mistakes at all and they do the same correct procedure multiple times, now it's not interesting to watch anymore.
right.
I was watching a live stream last night where a 24-year-old guy was repairing a locomotive, and I could see that the two power wires, which were supposed to be coming from the opposite side of the track, because one's positive, one's negative, that they weren't, the color coding was backwards, or the one, and I could see that he was wiring up the same side of the track to both ends of the motor, and I saw it, but because I was watching the live stream delayed, because I didn't tune in from the beginning, if I had seen it in real time, I would have put in a note, check your leads. And in fact, he had them backwards, and then he put on the track, it didn't run, and he took it back and says, "Oh, I made a stupid mistake." I assumed that the red and the red were the same side, but they were wired up the wrong way. And I remember in watching Howdy Doody that the peanut gallery would scream at the characters for making stupid mistakes. And of course, the character like Clarabelle would ignore the peanut gallery. But that was an art to making a mistake, having the bumbling character make a mistake that the audience can see them making, and then yell at them. They don't understand it. You know, they pretend not to understand it. That's an art. That's an art. That's an entertaining thing that, you know, good entertainers sort of figure that out.
Yeah,
Especially
I watched the new Adam Sandler comedy special is out on Netflix. And I thought it'd be stale. I've already seen him do everything he's ever going to do. He's done so many movies. I don't think it's going to be that interesting. It was some of his best work. I thought he took silly to a level that I didn't think silly could go to. I think he reinvented silly. It was the silliest thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It was so silly. I was trying not to laugh because it was so stupid and silly, and I couldn't not laugh. It was just too ridiculous.
Being a comic is hard work. It takes a lot of ingenuity and a lot of practice to be a good comic.
Yeah. Yeah, if you like silly, silly, silly things, check it out. It's very silly.
Yeah, I currently don't have a live subscription. I stopped watching Netflix after the series that I had been watching completed, and there wasn't any new series that were of any interest.
Yeah, they also did something novel in Netflix where to make sure that people aren't using each other's subscription, if you log in from a different area or different location, it'll ask you for the person that owns the account to send you a code, and they give you a 14-day trial.
Yeah,
And so that way, if someone wants to share their Netflix with you and they're not sharing it with more than, if they have 4 accounts or 5 accounts, they
yeah,
can share it with you and you get 14 days on their account. So you're not there forever.
yeah. So, but like I say, as one grows old, there's less and less activities that one can find that's within one's bailiwick that's also interesting and not bewildering. It's a feature growing old. It's a feature of retiring. You simply don't have the wherewithal to continue on with the career that you've now retired from. And find a hobby or some activity that's not so expensive that you can't afford it, not so challenging that you can't complete it. I mean, people start projects, they never complete them because they underestimate what's involved.
Absolutely.
Or they run into challenges that they can't figure out the engineering to solve.
I got a little one that just came outside and I'm trying to be quiet, but I think she hears me. So,
Doesn't she know where to find you by now?
oh, she does.
So,
She's being good. She didn't say anything. So, yeah.
So Barry,
yeah,
maybe you've already answered it, but I was looking for something concise. Is boredom bad? Is being bored a bad thing?
I would say it's undesirable. I wouldn't call it bad, I'd call it undesirable.
Which is in the bad side of
It's negative affective,
right.
but words like good and bad are so vaguely, broadly defined that I try to find a more precise word. I would simply say undesirable.
Yeah, I'm bored with good and bad. I think if
Everything
you're
is a
Barry and you're constantly vexed and perplexed and that's your natural state, and then you're not vexed and perplexed, then that's weird.
Well, I would much rather be intrigued and fascinated and engaged than, uh, oh boy, not this again. Oy vey. My eyes glaze over.
Does that
Yeah.
include possible seminars at MIT?
I used to go to them a few times a month. I don't go to them anymore. I get the notifications, I just don't go to them anymore. It's too much overhead.
Speaking on weird things in Massachusetts, what I saw some crazy young computer programmers that looked like they were all methed out trying to figure out this thing called Urbit. Has that
Urbit?
come across you guys' radar?
I don't know what Urbit is.
It's
URBIT.
Never
yeah,
heard of it.
it's happening in Summer, Massachusetts. There's a bunch of crazy programmers trying to redo computing.
Oh, I haven't seen any notifications of that. I saw a headline that says Fortran is coming back. It's kind of eyebrow raising, but I didn't read it because I said, okay, so Fortran's coming back, big deal.
Did you say Fortran?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would believe 4chan rather than Fortran.
Did 4chan go away, or is that still around?
Probably still in the dark web.
Yeah. What did you know? What just really? I'm sorry. This is just something that bugs the crap out of me. Why did that dark web thing stick? I thought it was just called the internet. Why did it that it's a dark web? Because why?
Because it's illegal activities. It's trafficking in
No, but
guns.
when did they relate illegal with, they separated the legal web and the illegal web? I thought the whole thing was the legal and illegal web together as one. I did When did they separate that?
Oh, it's because things like the onion router and other technologies which allowed you to anonymize your IP so that you could make an IP connection without the far end knowing your IP. That's non-trivial, but that's made it possible to anonymize yourself. So you couldn't.
And it's
You
not
couldn't.
100% reliable either.
I don't know. You know, I mean, the CIA and NSA get into the dark web and they try to figure things out from other evidence. But since I'm not trafficking in, taboo stuff, I have no need for the dark web. I mean, there are people who use VPNs because you can't watch a movie coming from the UK if you're not in the UK, but then they use VPNs to watch it. I don't even do that. I mean, I used to use a VPN out of MIT. I don't even remember why I used it. It was just convenient. But then I stopped using the MIT VPN.
But is that because of the control of the service provider itself and what they were like? What are you trying to get around? The service provider, right?
Oh, I remember one reason that I used it was when I was on Wikipedia and I had a reputation that some of the administrators tried to block me and they could block me by IP. First, I would change my IP manually to a different Verizon IP. And then when that stopped working, then I would use VPN into MIT or some other university so that I wasn't even coming from the same ISP. I did that for a while, but it was a stupid game. It wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It just made me sad that you had to do all these block. Like it used to be, you could go anywhere you wanted to go on the internet. No one cared.
Yeah, yeah. But there were corrupted men's on Wikipedia that were pushing some topic and not being academic about it, and they would block people who would push back against them.
Did all this start right after 9/11 when the Homeland Security Act?
I didn't. No, my troubles on Wikipedia were around 2010.
No, I'm not saying Wikipedia. I'm just saying the coining dark web is it.
Oh,
Did
I
they
don't.
enlighten? Yeah, I'm just from my experience, it was the NSA wanted to tap everything on the internet, and they had the legal means to do it once they passed Homeland Security Act.
That I couldn't tell you. I don't really know.
Hmm.
I really don't know that. I know that trafficking. What was that kid in San Francisco who was using the San Francisco Public Library? He got caught on the dark web and ended up getting indicted. I mean, there were some big national stories about people who got caught doing some kind of scamming or whatever, pyramid schemes or um, Bitcoin scamming schemes and things like that.
Yeah.
I was really sad to see the early internet, which was basically academics, and then when it went commercial and then the charlatans got into the game, the black hat hackers got into the game and started doing evil things on the internet. That really was a very sad transition from the promise of the early internet to the disappointment of the later internet.
That's
Yeah.
inevitable.
You can say it's, I mean, you saw it in politics too. So you saw governments go corrupt. Things get, I mean, the notion of corruption is so ubiquitous in the culture, and things get corrupted. Profit motive corrupts, and Boeing. I mean, you see it over and over again, and it's sad.
Well, that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Sam, about good and bad. Is it good? Is it bad? Are you a white hat hacker? Are you a black hat hacker? Are you a good one or a bad one? Are you a red hat hacker? Like, are you in the gray area? Like, where are you?
A fedora hacker.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think a lot of people are concerned with was what I'm doing good is what I'm doing bad. I think that's a very common trope in terms of how you're raised.
Yeah, fedora
Is
was
it
originally
good or is
called
it bad?
red hat, wasn't it?
I've been hanging out with this guy that calls himself Satan, and he declares that he is Lucifer, and he turns off, I would say, 95% of the people that he talks to, because they just start going, wait a second, is this guy joking or is he wait, I think he really thinks he's the devil. And then once you say that word, the devil, oh no, that's bad. The devil is bad.
Trolling is a sport, and there are, I don't know, 5% of the people on the internet are just run it to troll for the entertainment value, and they ruin it. This is the Gresham's law of the internet, that trolling drives out the good posters.
Yeah.
And that's been true even before the internet. It was true back on Usenet. And it basically ruins the sport.
Bless you. Yeah. It's definitely I think good and bad. Yeah, come here. I wants to tell you her latest name.
She has a new
She
name
changed it. Yeah, she every day now.
every day.
What's our name today? Do you want to tell me? Huh.
Can you tell him?
Yeah, come on. Whoa.
Hiya.
Oh, you okay?
I'm watching this.
Oh, cool.
Good. What do you got? Butterflies on your forehead? What is that?
Here, hold on one second. Let me put it on speaker. Here, wait, press pause. Here's a speaker on. Let me see.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to figure out
Okay.
if that's looks like a cicada or a butterfly or something. I can't tell what it is.
She got a ladybug on her face yesterday at the car
It's a
show.
ladybug. Okay.
Yeah. Here, tell them your name and then we can go and watch, okay?
No, I just want to watch.
You just want to watch?
No,
But if I'm talking, then it's going to be loud. Do you want me to turn it down?
no, I want to turn it.
Oh, really?
I want to.
Yep. Well,
Turn it up.
yeah, I heard you. Is your name Gabby?
Look at all that.
Here, I'm gonna have to turn the voice isolation on. Hey, say hi to Barry.
I want you to wash inside.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna turn. Here, real quick though, you said you wanted to come over and tell them your name. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So your name is Gabby. Her name's Gabby from Gabby's Dollhouse.
Oh.
And my name is DJ Catnip, the little cat that plays the piano.
DJ Catnip.
Is that my name?
No.
What's my name? Oh, it is DJ Catnip. I knew it. Do you want to watch this while I'm talking? I'm gonna see if I can turn voice isolation. Let me know, Barry. I'm gonna let's see if the technology works. Okay. Can you hear me, Barry?
I can.
Okay, let's see. Turn have voice isolation on, and if you hear her, let me know. You shouldn't be able to hear her.
Okay.
So
Your lips moving, but I
here,
don't hear anything.
do you hear the iPhone or iPad? Here.
Now I hear her.
You do hear her?
I did just then.
Oh, okay, interesting. It's the voice isolation, I guess, is not identifying my voice versus hers, but it should cut out
Yours is
background noise.
loud. Hers was faint, but I could hear it.
Oh, okay.
Now, yeah, now she's
They
muted.
did. She said he said your face paint is awesome. There you go.
And then there's a green thing on the other side, which I can't quite make out.
Yep.
Just why did you see that big frog?
I'm watching.
That big frog.
Yeah,
You just don't.
it's cool.
But you don't think I what it is.
I'm talking with Barry and Sam right now.
But I don't want.
You want me to play with you? Okay. I think that's what's going on. I can maybe come back. Let me see what she's up to. Speaking on bored, this is bored right here. This is the very definition of I'm bored. I want to play with someone, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, yeah, so even children get bored, and they do. I remember growing up, I go, Mom, there's nothing I can do today. What can I do today? You didn't say bored, but it was like, I can't find anything to do. And she said, oh, you can clean the house.
You like to clean the house?
Mm-mm.
No. What's fun to do?
Come
To make it messy?
Mhm.
That's fun. After it's messy, is it fun to clean it?
Mm-mm.
What's
It's
what?
fun to play.
It's fun to play,
It's gonna play with me when I stay alone.
right? You said no one's going to play with me when I stay alone.
Well, it's
That,
hard to find a playmate when you're alone.
yeah. So should we go play?
Play solitaire.
Yep. No, she's been doing that all morning. She got up at 6.
Oh, geez.
She's been waiting. That's yeah, I think this is I need to go and play with her for a little bit.
All righty.
You want to say goodbye?
Mm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll see if I can come back.
All
Say
right.
bye to Sam. All right, we'll do some fun things. I'll be back. Let me see how long it takes.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye for now. So no Kayla today and no Heiner and no Sam Chan today.
I think recent observations and feedback have prompted me to consider a new rules of engagement for Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Perhaps more focus, perhaps more planned topics, perhaps more moderation, perhaps more specific follow-up and less free association. That seems to have been the theme every time I've heard suggestions about this, and I suspect that's a large reason why people don't stay.
Well, I mean, the population of these sessions were down to what, never more than 5 different people? Is that
Yeah, we had
basically?
5 yesterday, right?
Yeah. It used to be, there was a dozen or more people
Yep.
who would come on,
Yep.
not so much anymore. Maybe I drove them all away. I don't know.
I suspect it's me. So I'm going to give that some thought. Shall we give that some thought, Barry?
Well, I'll tell you, if I had any good ideas, I would share them. But that's the other thing is that the rate at which I come up with fresh ideas is dwindling, shall we say.
I'm also
Dwindling.
thinking perhaps we could reduce the frequency. The fact that it's every week means that there's less preparation involved. And if I actually take more time,
There's almost no preparation. I don't,
even if there is preparation, I don't do any moderation to actually keep it on focus, on topic.
well, also when you turn off your camera, you basically walk away, for long periods of time. That means you're not engaged. Maybe you find something else in life, more engaging than these dull, boring sessions.
Yeah, those are instances where I feel that I've tried a little bit, but the topic seems to be running its own course. So I'm letting it run its own course.
Yeah, but you're not interested in it. You're not attending it either. And that is a definition of boredom. I don't find this topic interesting.
No, but I don't say it's boredom. I actually end up doing something else that's interesting.
Yeah, basically it's uninteresting, which is the antonym of boredom.
Not necessarily uninteresting, but just off topic.
Well, there isn't a topic.
Well, when I actually come with certain specific topics and it wanders off, then I do ask myself, should I bring it back or should I just let it go?
Yeah. Well, you can adopt a framework of learning theory saying, is anybody learning anything of interest? And often the answer is no, nobody's learning anything of interest. Even if they're learning anything at all, it's not of interest. I mean, I will attend to stuff where there is a topic that's learnable, but I'm not interested in learning it. When will I ever use this?
So if I get a sense that you're not learning anything, Barry, should I intervene?
Well, if you were ingenious enough, yes, but most people aren't ingenious enough to know how to intervene to rectify that. When I was much younger, it was a lot easier.
How often does your family visit you?
Well, the last time I saw my brother, he was on the East Coast for a few days. I'm going to say it had to be before COVID. And he'll call when he's driving. He will sometimes call me on his cell phone when he's driving, and that's like a couple times a month. We'll talk.
Well, that's 4+ years ago.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen any relatives in face to face since well before I think 4 or 5 years. I'd have to go back and see when that was, but because I had to drive out to Cape Cod to meet him, and I haven't driven inner city probably since before COVID. I replaced my car a year and a half ago, so I have a car that's capable of driving inner city safely, but I haven't. And then, of course, I had the issue with cataract surgery. I finally had cataract surgery, which made it not unrealistic to drive because I had a good enough vision, but I still haven't driven inner city even since cataract surgery, which is just a few months ago. I mean, I had a chance. I could have gone up to Maine to help somebody celebrate their 90th birthday, but I didn't go because I was leery of driving inner city after all these years of not driving inner city.
Would that happen to be Portland, Maine?
It's in the neighborhood of Portland. It's actually, it's either Portland or one of the towns around it.
I
It's
think I
about a
was
2.5
last
hour
there.
drive.
When was I last there? 2019, I think I was last there.
Yeah.
5.5 years ago. Anyway, Barry, I'm gonna give this some thought, because Saturdays and Sundays, if nobody's happy with them and nobody's learning anything from them, then either we should cancel them or change them.
Yeah, well, if I had any good ideas, I'd share them, but like I say, I'm running out of ideas.
I'll propose some stuff this week or maybe next Saturday and Sunday. Okay?
I mean, it would be nice to get into a collaborative activity where I have something to offer. I enjoy offering it and it's worthwhile. And that's a lot of criteria to be able to find something that fits the bill. And again, I mean, I'm 80 years old. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I don't have the drive or the enthusiasm or the energy or the cognitive faculties to do anymore.
You still have a dozen years. I'll just give you an example, okay? My dad, for example, he's 92, and he just finished his sixth book last year at 91.
Yeah.
So you got plenty of time, Barry.
Well, I haven't written a long manuscript for 45 years. And the first one that I wrote, and it was automatic writing. I mean, I was just compelled to write it. My father said it was boring. I don't know if anybody even read it. I think maybe Anne-Marie may have read it.
Anyway, Josh, while you were gone, I was just saying to Barry, if people here are not learning and they're finding this boring, then I'm saying the format and moderation for Saturdays and Sundays should change. So I'm going to give that some thought, and we can give that some thought.
Sounds good. I remember that. I always go back to it was like 3 years ago when you and Eric did a timed format on a Sunday, and it was really engaging. I really like that format. If you remember what I'm talking about, if I'm jogging your memory, I personally enjoyed that for Sundays of a very structured time, and then a loose thing on Saturday is nice. But I've definitely, you know what I miss the most is just sharing screens. We used to share screens all the time and share whiteboards and different stuff and Trellos and stuff like that. And there's so many new tools since we used to do that. It would be fun to engage in just learning. At least, if anything, we learn the new tools together a little bit. Like I would love to have yeah, imagine a Sunday session where it was timed out and we went, okay, let's write the code with Devin or with Claude, and okay, now halfway through the hour, let's run it. Now let's debug it and then pick it up next Sunday. That'd be fun, I think.
I do remember at times trying to share mind maps or diagrams or schematics, and that actually drove away a number of people. I do recall that, but yes, I enjoyed that myself.
Yeah, but imagine if we had a specific chat agent that was doing the timing for us on the side, just like we have this AI companion here in Zoom. So a chat agent that said it's getting stale. Here's some new interesting things. And it was, anyway, I can think of a lot of things, but it'd be fun to play that way.
I have to admit that I've had some interesting conversations with Gemini or ChatGPT that surpass any conversations I've had with real people. Somehow or other, these LLMs seem to have the art of conversation better than most people.
Well, they're trained on a lot of conversations.
Yeah. Well, and also I will go to them if I'm trying to remember something where I can remember little bits and pieces of it, but not the whole story. If I give them the bits and pieces, they'll pretty quickly fill in the blanks.
Do you remember we were trying to teach it what was wrong with Bell's theorem? You had a gripe with Bell's theorem, and
yeah, I published several versions of that, either on Facebook or on one of my blogs. I posted several conversations where I was doing the Socratic method or some version of it and getting it to construct a line of reasoning and either analyze Bell's theorem or the motions and learning stuff, And that was interesting because I had never done it with an LLM, and it was quite amusing. And after I did that for a few months, that sort of ran out of good examples that were publishable, that were, of some kind of interest.
Yeah, there was a really good Veritasium this week. I don't know if you guys caught it on French mathematicians in the 1700s, and then going back to ancient Greece, how to figure out true democracy voting and what the mathematical probabilities are of actually creating a feasible, true democratic system that
Yeah,
could work.
I watched it. I think yesterday I watched that one, the
Yeah.
social choice theory. I actually met Kenneth Arrow at Stanford,
Mm.
and I knew about his work before I met him. And so the notion that voting systems are problematic, the Condorcet paradox, and other social choice stuff. And now that's all very interesting. It also explains how to be clever about gerrymandering so that you can change the outcome of district voting by
Yeah.
careful that stuff is pretty well documented in the academic literature. And Veritasium notwithstanding, the general public is generally unaware of that stuff.
Well, the one thing I got aware of that I didn't know that I should have been taught in school was the comment period in the democratic process. Like, do they talk about that? Have you heard anyone say we need to have a comment period in a town hall on this bill before the bill can even go to Congress?
I know the FCC has comment periods whenever you have a change of rules in a bureaucratic system where the bureaucracy is setting up the rules. There's typically a comment period on rule change. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, people know that there's a bill, being debated, and they'll write their congressman, which is essentially an implied comment period.
Well, but I'm saying before it even goes to Congress, you're supposed to have a comment period before the bill is written up, and
Yeah.
you're supposed to be able to discuss that. And I just see somehow they didn't tell anyone. Like, I don't see, do you see anything on CNN or
Well,
C-SPAN type of thing with?
I think if you watch C-SPAN, you're aware that a committee is considering some issue and going to write up a legislative bill to submit to the main body. But I don't watch C-SPAN, so to what and also the congressional record. It's in the congressional record, which I think is published. But I don't know how many people in the general public follow that stuff. The news will pick it up if it's an important story, like stuff on abortion or some some topic that's contentious. A lot of it is arcane and not of general interest. It might affect some industry or something, but
I'm saying the laws are written so that before a committee writes up a bill or puts a piece of legislation into a bill, they're supposed to have the public comment on it, much like Sam's saying, good collaborology, you have the comment time.
I think the congressional record probably reports that. The thing is that it's either going to be in the congressional record only or congressional record and C-SPAN only, because most
No, I'm trying to tell you, I looked into this and they do have that comment period. They just, nobody knows about it, so no one makes a comment. It's like me saying, I wrote up this paper and I don't show it to you guys, and I say, can you comment on it? But I never showed it to you, or I never tell you where it is on the file.
Well, that's the whole point, is if you read the congressional record, which most people don't, it'll tell you where to find it. If you watch C-SPAN, it will tell you the name of the committee, which you can then contact. But like I say, most people don't attend a priori to congressional record or C-SPAN where the stuff is. I mean, your local newspaper will announce some local ordinance that's coming up. I'll even get email from
Right, but most people don't know that exists. In other words, people in my generation were not taught that in school. They didn't teach that in the civics classes in school. I learned it from a lady in Switzerland that told me about how my government works, and I went, wait, how come I didn't learn this?
we didn't even, they stopped teaching civics even before I was in grammar school. Like civics is basically, they stopped teaching it. And if you do teach civics and you teach it in a scientific way, a mathematically scientific way, you have to also teach why our regulatory mechanisms are fundamentally mathematically dysfunctional from the get-go. The architecture is fundamentally dysfunctional. That's the key finding of a deep dive into civics, that all of the systems for coming up with rules and regulations and laws, well, whether it's a voting system or whatever it is, they're fundamentally mathematically flawed. That's the whole point of Arrow's impossibility theorem and stuff like it.
So my point is, it's not flawed. It's a perfect system. The flawed part is when you have a part of that system that's not being participated in. In other words, if the voting system was great, but no one ever told you what day the voting is happening for the president of the United States, that'd be not a flawed system. It's just they're not publishing the voting date. You have to either know it or you don't. You either read it or you didn't. It's one of those, like, you either know or you don't know.
It's in the newspaper. Here where I live, they mail you a mail-in ballot for next Tuesday is a statewide elections, citywide and statewide elections. And I know about it because a month ago they sent me a mail-in ballot. And the point is that most people don't vote in them because there's no contested, almost nothing on the ballot is contested. So what's the point of, it's not like you have a choice between A and B that matters, is that there really isn't any, there's one or two contests. Like when somebody retires, there's somebody who's retiring after 40 years. And so it's contested. And they told the story. Because before that, there really wasn't any opposition to the person who's been doing it for 40 years. This is a public service.
Well, I remember there was a movement for a hot second, and I saw it go away, of people that were crowdsourcing legal structure writing and people that were writing their own bills and presenting them to their senators and Congress people.
Yeah. I mean, some states, I know Nebraska had a option where the public can put something on the ballot. I forget what they're called now, but you can, if you get enough signatures, you can get things on the ballot. Which are either regulations or guidance to the legislature. And occasionally these are controversial. But
what would you think about that movement, Barry or Sam, if you had a popular movement on TikTok, on social media, saying, here is this legislation, here's what is flawed, here's what doesn't work about it, here is a potential bill that we could have passed that could change, not necessarily take away that regulation, but allow it to run smoother or work better?
I'll tell you that in cases where I've written up why the proposal is fundamentally flawed from a mathematical perspective, I've written that up. People ignore it. I get no reaction. It has no effect.
But you didn't have a group of 100,000 people on your TikTok or on your Facebook or on whatever backing you up.
If you do something mathematically, you have a very tiny audience.
Right, but if you do it mathematically with an audience of 100,000 in your state,
good luck finding an audience of 100,000 that attends to arcane, academic stuff. They don't exist.
So you just gave up before you even started?
It's not that I gave up. I publish the stuff. It's out there, and nobody picks it up and runs with it. Nobody picks up the ball and runs with it because nobody cares, or it's just, I don't know.
No, they care. They just weren't communicated in a way that they grokked it.
Good luck, Grok. Good luck explaining logic and mathematics to the general public.
Well, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it in 2021, but I think with the advent of these large language models, I think I have a chance. I feel, I could be wrong, but I think that I have an opportunity to say, hey, Claude, I'd like you to explain this in the same way that the Kardashians explained why taking the hair off of your butt and on your pussy is really interesting to people to watch in waxing your coochie, and explain this mathematical principle and this legal structure in the same manner as Khloe Kardashian explained how she waxes her coochie. And it might come up with some really interesting writing.
Well, you know, Stacy and I did that. We took a couple of topics and asked ChatGPT to write a children's fable or fairy tale based on the academic, and it did. And Stacy was impressed. She said those are really good fables or fairy tales, and they are good allegories or metaphors or whatever, analogies. And we even published them, but you know, it was an exercise that had an audience of two, Stacy and
Yeah,
me.
but the difference between a publisher that publishes it and it gets seen by 1,000 people is different than a publisher that publishes it, it gets seen by 1,000,000 people.
Yeah, well, I guess if you want to pay a lot of money, you can get somebody to publish something. But the thing is, you can't. I mean, Stephen Hawking wrote a book called A Brief History of Time, and a lot of people bought it. It was on the bestseller list, but almost nobody read it. It was ironic. It was ironic that a lot of people bought the book and put it.
Wait
on
a second.
You
don't. When you say a lot, give me a number. What's the number a lot?
It was enough to make it to the bestseller list on New York Times, whatever that is. Enough people bought it that it made the bestseller list, but it also had an unbelievably low readership.
What was your metric to define how many people read it?
I got that from well, I think one of the ways that they looked at it is they looked at the people who commented, who bought it, say, off of Amazon, and then commented on it. And statistically, it had very sparse comments from the people who bought it, suggesting that they didn't read it and share what they read. See, the reviews and so on just didn't live up.
That book came out way before Amazon was even a company. I read that book. I'm just saying, I read that book when I was 16. I never commented on Amazon about it. So does that mean I didn't read it?
The answer is I don't know how, but people who somehow managed to.
This is what I'm saying, Barry. People lie. People literally will take. You can do any statistical, any social experiment, and make it come out any way you want it to.
I once dated a girl, a divorcee, who had an entire wall of her living room was a bookcase, and it must have had 1,000 books on it. And I'd go to her house and I would look at the books on the library and I'd pull one off and I'd say, "This looks like an interesting book." She says, "Oh, I didn't find that book very interesting." I put it back. All right, no big deal. A week later, I pull a different book off and I'd say, and after about 17 times, "Oh, I didn't find that book interesting." I realized those aren't her books. Those are her ex-husband's books. She never read any of them. It turned out she couldn't read. But
yeah, well, people lie.
Huh?
They lie. She lied to you.
She lied to me. But the thing was, it took a lot of cases, or like one or two cases, you dismiss it. But when it was a pattern with multiple cases, then I began to put two and two together. But this person, I had a boss at MITRE who was functionally illiterate, couldn't read or write. Now, it never occurred to me that you could have somebody who's the head of the network center who's functionally illiterate, but he was. And it took me a couple of years to gather enough evidence. One time I went to a meeting of the group, and there was a topic that was coming up, and I had written up a page of my analysis of it. And he brought it up at the meeting, this topic, with no ideas about it. At the end of the meeting, I handed it to him and I said, "Here are my thoughts on that topic." And he says, "Oh yeah, I've already read that." Now I know that he couldn't have read it because I just wrote it and printed it out just before the meeting. He claimed to have read it. Now that was obviously a lie because I wrote the damn thing. And I knew that he's the first person I gave it to. Nobody, I had not even given it to anybody else.
I think you bring up a good point, is that people have skated on the outskirts of society, pretending to be participating and pretending to be a part of these conversations. But like, I just had a conversation with someone the other day, and he used this old trope on me where he said, "No, that's not true. That's your opinion." And I said, "Okay, well, you are illogical. It's not my opinion. It is absolutely a fact. I'm not opinionated about the subject." And then at the end of my whole rant, he said, "Well, that's your opinion." So
Right.
he learned this one little simple loop that uses on 80% of the people and it works. But when he tried to use it on me, it didn't work.
Right. And then you find out about somebody that they're a fraud or a charlatan or,
Mm-hmm.
or a fake or whatever. And once you find that out, you're their enemy. They don't want you around anymore, and they're going to do everything they can to get rid of you, which
Well,
is what
because
happened.
it's the same thing you said when you went to that thing and you said, "This guy's a charlatan," and he said, "Get out of here." And there's a famous story by Dave Chappelle where he learned that lesson young.
Yep.
And if you expose the people in a way, so this is what I learned. If you expose the people in a way that it takes away their livelihood, that's dangerous, because they will fight you and they will be very angry.
They'll get rid of you.
But if you expose them in a way that brings them up so that they don't have to do that charlatan move anymore and they can actually do a different thing that brings them up, then they'll thank you. And I've done that many times with people that are lying to me and they're telling me that they know what's going on, da da da. And then after we talk for a while, or they get a couple drinks in them, I pull them aside and they go, "You know what? I fucking never learned this shit and I'm just bullshitting." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And they go, "You know what? I do want to learn this stuff, but no one's ever taken the time to teach it to me in a way that I can grok it and understand it." And then I'll spend an hour with that person and they'll go, "You know what? Thank you." And then I see them and I'm like best friends with that person because they're like, "That dude spent an hour explaining the thing that no one ever explained to me." And they're so thankful because their little bullshit lie that they were living in their whole life evaporated. And they're happy to evaporate it.
I spent part of my time at Bell Laboratories in the role of a consultant. And the definition of a consultant is someone who borrows your watch to tell you what time it is.
Well, that's funny, but it's also not true because there are good consultants out there. I never wanted to be a consultant, and I realized at some point that that is what people call someone who someone asks a question to and they have the answer to the thing that they don't have the answer to.
Point is that they have the information, but they don't know how to process it. So,
Yeah,
so when you say they borrow your watch,
I got it.
So it's a funny, because they don't know how to read the watch.
But that's okay because they have a fancy, nice watch and everyone sees it and goes, "That's a really cool watch."
And they think they know what time it is. But I mean, okay. Anyhow,
Yeah, that
but the point is that after a while you become cynical.
I think that's the basis of the conversation today on this Sunday, is how cynical are we at this point?
Well,
Is that an accurate thing, Sam? Are you still there, Sam?
I don't think he's listening.
I have to get off mute, so it takes me a while to get off mute.
No worries.
What was the question again?
My question is the conversation, how cynical are we? Not how bored are we, but how cynical are we?
I'm not at all cynical. I am more trying to figure out how to turn things into a direction that I find desirable and less undesirable for others. But I'm not cynical about it.
Because I go in and out of being cynical. I go into being Barry and being Sam. Like, I feel like some points I'm super cynical, and then it gets to a point where it's affecting my health and my mental health and the people around me. And then I just can't be cynical for too long because that state of being is not helping me or anyone around me. It's just bringing everyone down. Like, I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than cynical and right.
I'd rather be inspired, but if you go for a long time without any inspiration, then you begin to suspect that inspiration isn't coming, and that's cynicism.
I get it. And that's a state of being where I mean, inspiration strikes at different times for different people. You have to be open to receive it.
Yeah. But it can happen that inspiration doesn't come in your lifetime. It might not come for 100 years or even a millennium. And then
It might
somebody,
come tomorrow. I think it's a state of mind where you know that if you look in a cabinet for something and you tell yourself you can't find it, you will never find it. It could be right in front of your face and you'll never find the pepper.
I know that I put something down and I can't figure out, and I know that I don't have it in my hand. I can see it's not in the place where I last used it. I have no idea where I put it. It happens, I don't say every day, but probably once or twice a week, I put something down and I don't know where I put it.
Yeah, I'm, just managing our own memory process is harder as we get older. But
Yeah.
the one thing that's giving me hope is that I used to have to memorize all the phone numbers of all the people I talked to. And then I went to Radio Shack and I bought this little 19K I could typing device. It was before there was wizards and those type of things. It was the first one, really small. It had rubber keys and it was beautiful. And I put all the phone numbers into that and I could transfer it over to my wizard. And then I transferred it from all the information from my wizard over to my super Casio, whatever it was. Then I transferred that to what was it, the Mac one? They made the little Palm. And then I transferred that one to my Palm Pilot. And I transferred my Palm Pilot to my BlackBerry. And then my BlackBerry, I just kept transferring up and over. But that memory I still have from when I was 19 at Radio Shack.
So I can't even remember my own phone number anymore.
But you don't need to anymore. That's the whole awesome thing. We have a supercomputers in our pockets.
I took my car in for servicing. The guy says, what's your phone number again? And I said, I have to look it up. I don't remember it.
But wouldn't Einstein be proud the fact that he realized that there's only so much real estate in our active storage system? And if we want to clear some memory and do a little bit of defragging to open up some kernels that are available for other things, that we have the opportunity to do that now in ways that we never had. And we could have the entire library of every law that's ever been written since the 1300s on our iPhones.
Yeah, and then the funny thing is to find the laws which are mutually contradictory.
Yeah, and we could have every write-up of that from every article of every law magazine inside a language model that's interpreted into algorithmic understandings of those conversations.
There's a word antinomy, which is not the name of the element antimony. It's antinomy, which means two rules or laws which are mutually contradictory, that if you adhere to one, you're breaking the other.
Yeah.
And that's commonplace, mutually contradictory regulations where there's no feasible course of action. Every course of action breaks one of the laws.
Yeah. I'm just excited that I don't have to think. Like, the older I get, the stupider I get, because I don't want to think about. I used to have to memorize all of this stuff and be that dude that had it all right there on the tip of my tongue. Yeah. I don't have to be that dude anymore.
And I find I can't even be it if I wanted to.
But I am that now because I just ask Google, and then I usually store the things that Google has trouble with into my note area. So I just ask my notes and it pulls it right up.
I mean, my brother will call me up to ask me something that I published 5 years ago that he knows that I know about it, but he's too lazy to look it up. So he calls me up to,
Sure. But I'm just saying, we're about to get the digital assistant that we always dreamed of is 2 years away, and it will be on the Huawei just made a new AI chip. Qualcomm has wonderful AI chips. Apple has AI chips. NVIDIA has AI chips. These little chips will be in the device in our pocket, and the digital assistant will be real. It'll actually not just pull the thing up the way Google wants to pull it up in Gemini, but it will pull it up the way Barry wants to pull it up.
Sabina Hassenfelder thinks that the energy consumption of the new AI will be off the charts.
Well, I've done the research on that. It will be off the charts. It's an exponential that's beyond your imagination.
Like Bitcoin and AI want more computing power that costs more energy, than anybody ever.
But Barry, you do know that right now, today, the amount of energy that hit the Earth from the sun, the unused amount of energy is more than we'll use in 100 years.
Oh, yeah. And we don't have the solar capture technology.
No, we do.
enough
We do
and
have it. Let's stop lying to ourselves. We
we
do
don't
have
have
it.
ubiquitous enough, dispersed enough, you know.
We do have the ability to make it ubiquitous.
It's not that we can't, we haven't yet, and it's going to be a
No,
while.
even if we only have done 1% right now, how much do you think of solar capture we've done for what we need?
I don't know. I mean, some of Hasselfelder's videos show the percentage of total energy from different sources. I don't know that solar is that high yet. It might be around 10%, maybe. Something to guess.
Nope,
Just
27%.
worldwide or just in developed countries?
Oh, no, I mean, in terms of the amount of electrons that are going through a panel, it's using 20% of 27% efficiency is the highest.
That's efficiency. I'm talking about total
Yeah.
power consumption of the grid is being supplied by.
Well, let's look it up. What do you, yeah, what is
Yeah.
the total
Yeah.
globally or
I mean, I don't
nationally?
memorize statistics. There's no point memorizing statistics because what's the point? You can look, you can somebody, and even then, you know, how did you get the statistics? So I know that Hasselfelder often talks about the percentage of power from different sources in different countries. I mean, they thought that nuclear was going to be the biggie. And there are still people who think that nuclear power is going to eventually be more important than solar.
So what percentage do you think is happening right now?
Worldwide,
Yeah, worldwide.
I'd say less than 10%.
That's correct. But is it 1%, 3%, 7%?
Maybe if you're lucky, 5%, maybe just a little less than 5%.
That's pretty darn accurate. It's somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5.
And that kind of comes from Sabina's stuff mainly, but
So I'm sorry, I just get excited because I don't think if you put a little bit of focus, meaning every nation allocated 3% of their GDP to solving this 4.5% total global coming from solar, and if they just allocated every nation in the world, put 3% of their GDP to it, we would have 100% in under a year.
yeah, and nothing to eat because they're not producing food or
No, you can still produce food. Doesn't take away from the food budget.
Well, if your whole GDP is whatever it is, I don't know. I'm cynical about this stuff because it's they always hype it, and one of the things that Sabina does is she's always knocking down the hype. There's so damn much hype that
Well, I'm not cynical because I live in the state of California, and because if you drive anywhere inland in California, you'll for 45 minutes you'll just see solar panels and wind turbines everywhere.
Well, I've seen the wind turbines. Was on Route 80 or wherever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Seen pictures of the wind farm.
I should I drive over there one day? It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. I could drive and be doing the GCC call underneath 50 wind turbines.
Well, you can just take a picture of it off the internet, put that behind you, like I got the aurora behind me.
Yeah, but that's not as powerful as me going, look at this, Barry. See this giant pole that's bigger than my body?
By the
This is a
way,
wind
there was a
turbine.
giant wind turbine off of the Massachusetts coast where one of the blades, the gigantic blades, just fell off into the ocean
Yeah, I heard about that.
a month or so ago. And I think it was a manufacturing defect or something like that.
I'm just saying right now in California, they had some serious energy problems. A lot of the power problems are also causing forest fires. And there's a lot of issues with power consumption.
They don't work out the failure modes and the sort of the, you know, so if you look at the history of electric power generation and the grid, there are lots of failures that were unanticipated and not worked into the economic models when they build it, especially the nuclear plants, the 3 Mile Island and the Fukushima, and they had all these major failures. The one in Russia, where they simply didn't factor in the likelihood of these catastrophic failures.
Yeah, but you only hear about the failures. You don't hear about the successes. What about all the successful nuclear power plants in France?
I don't know, do they have any?
Yeah, they have quite a bit. What about the successful airplane manufacturing in France with Airbus? You don't hear about the you hear about Boeing doing bad stuff, but you don't hear that their contracts have been taken away by Airbus.
And they built the supersonic transport and it failed for, I think, well, partly for economic reasons and partly because of an accident.
Yeah, I think a lot of the cynicism comes from you'll only hear when there's a problem. You won't hear when there's a success.
That's generally true. The news tends to be unexpected events. If
Well, the
something,
news sucks. The news is shit, and the news is going away.
I
The
mean,
news
no,
doesn't exist 10
they
years from
won't
now.
tell you when the tea is running fine. They'll tell you the days that the tea is not running fine because that's what you need to know.
But I bet you there's an app in Boston for the tea, and it does tell you all the successful runnings of the tea.
Oh, I think you can look up and get the timetables and the on time. I mean, the airlines, they have on time statistics, but these are only statistics. If a flight is going to be delayed at the last minute, they can't tell you until the last minute that it is delayed.
Yeah, but let's just say the last 24 hours, how many successful flights happened around the world that
Probably most
went
of
unnoticed?
probably
Probably
most,
99.9% of all the flights
because
yesterday.
we're not going to publish 10,000 datas. You know, flight 727 from Newark to Los
But
Angeles landed safely.
they do publish that is what I'm saying. It's on every single app that shows you where each flight went. It's all published. It's all available data.
The database is there, but you have to ask for a specific flight, and it'll tell you what it knows about it.
Yeah.
But they don't
I guess
publish.
I'm trying to take your cynicism away in the sense that if you do the actual research of what's actually going on, there is by far more than 80% good thing. There was out of 1,000 people yesterday, 800 of those people greeted each other nicely, gave each other hugs, said hello, and less than 20% got into either a squabble verbally, and then less than 1% got into a physical altercation out of those 1,000 people.
It only takes one bad person to poison the well.
But it doesn't poison the well. There was 800 people that had a great freaking time yesterday.
Because they didn't drink from that well. But the one, look how many people died yesterday. What was the one? Oh, yeah, one of the Veritasium episodes I just watched. It was the one on the fast Fourier transform where there was a fusion bomb test that produced more energy than was predicted from the model. That they left out a possible pathway, and so produced 2.5 times more energy than they predicted, and the fallout killed people, you know, in a radius that they didn't think was that the bomb was going to affect. And there were all these people who got radiation poisoning and died or had to be evacuated. That was not foreseen.
And where was this?
In the Pacific, like Bikini Atoll area, where they were doing.
Right, with how many people? Population?
Well, the Bikini Atoll itself was nobody there, but the thing was, is the fallout.
Right, I'm saying what was the population of the fallout area?
Oh, that I don't know.
Right, and
But
how many people? How many people went out to a club last night in Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles in three
didn't get
major
shot up
cities?
and didn't get drunk and shot up and have an
Oh,
accident.
they got drunk. They got into fights. I guarantee it. But I'm just saying, how many people had a great time at the nightclub? Probably 80%.
Yeah. Now people go to a concert and say, "Well, that wasn't worth the money. I was better
How many
than that."
people went home and had oxytocin when they were making love to some random stranger last night from the club? Woke up in the morning and felt maybe a little bit embarrassed, but had a great time between 2 and 4 a.m. last night.
Couldn't tell you.
Probably millions.
I don't have access to that kind of data.
I'm just saying, like that you're not going to talk about the times when you had the best orgasm of your life.
Some people do. Some people
Some
brag.
people do. Yeah.
Some people brag about the great date they had the night before.
I'm
I would
just
say
saying statistically, more people are having a great time than are having a bad time.
Maybe, I don't know.
Prove me wrong, but I think I have the numbers to back it up.
I don't know how to prove statistics. I don't know how to do it.
Really?
That's the question that I know how to calculate, not calculate it. But most of them I don't know how to calculate. I don't know how to get the data.
Yeah, one of the good ways is this guy actually made an app for it, and it's pretty powerful. You can go to any blogging platform and just take the words "I feel" and then go to the end of the sentence. I feel miserable. I feel happy. I feel, and you can look at all the feelings of all the people that are posting,
Yeah.
all the comments in all the places.
I would write down, I feel alexithymic.
Yeah. I would say there's a lot more good in the world, if you want to use that term good. There's a lot more genuine, like even if you're a psycho killer and you've killed 30 people and you're a serial killer, you probably had thousands of wonderful interactions with thousands of people, but you chose those 30 people to torture and kill. So you're one of the worst horrible maniacs in the world, and you still went to the grocery store and said thank you and please when you got your milk and bread at the grocery store.
I usually try to be cordial to the staff.
Yeah. I'm just saying, even the most psycho crazy maniac is not killing every single person that they see.
No, they don't have the resources.
Well, even if they did, there's only in history, there's only been a handful of those type of Mussolini,
But look
characters.
at America's most famous whiner. We have a very well-known whiner who every day he whines, and he's got a following who loves his whining. Explain me how whining can be such a popular thing.
Well, explain to me why everyone loved him before he ran for president.
I mean,
He had the most popular TV show. He was well received. He was a Democrat. He had everything going for him, everything good, until he called out all of the people in his party, which was the Republican Party, and he called them all dumbasses and stupid and retarded, and he called them all out for being what they were. They were fucking retards. George Bush. Do you remember who he ran against? Jeb Bush.
Oh, in the primary.
Yeah, and was Jeb Bush a smart man?
I don't know.
Look up his career.
I don't know. He was a governor of Florida, so he wasn't terribly stupid, but
well, if Trump had not come in there and called him an idiot, he would have been the front runner for the Republican Party that year.
Yeah. And so how was it that the lying whiner, ends up at the top of the heap?
But is he a lying whiner, or is he a manipulative bastard to take down the people around him that can't keep up with his energy levels and his ability to call out the truth as he sees it in the world that he lives in, which is a corrupt blackmail system, which is terrible.
I don't have a good comeback for trolls either.
But he does.
I've encountered trolls, and basically the trolls, they claim to have the upper hand, and I have no idea whether the audience is even paying attention. For all I know, there is no audience.
I'm just saying, if he hadn't put his hat in the ring, it would have been Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton would have won.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, you can go back now that it's history. You can just go back and see that was the front runner of the Republican Party was Jeb Bush.
So,
and he didn't just take out the Democrats. He took out the Republicans. He took out all the people that said that he was irrelevant and wasn't able to do anything except for just be a joke.
He basically proved what Socrates predicted, that democracy is a flawed system, and it has its weaknesses, and they'll be exploited. And he was right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that makes him a good person or makes him a good leader or someone that I want to be my president.
A good manipulator. I mean, there are good villains too. There are villains who are very competent. They're very competent manipulator, very competent. They're competent tyrants, very good at being tyrants. very successful at being tyrants.
Well, I would love to read a book with you guys called One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1, and then there's Volume 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth looking into the blackmail that's been going on since after World War II.
It's very
between the
effective. It's very effective to scandalize people even when there is no real scandal.
Yeah.
Republicans are forever trying to scandalize Biden or Beau Biden or whatever, the Hunter Biden. They're trying to scandalize the opposite side, even when there's no basis for the claimed scandal. And when you get scandalized, you end up trying to defend yourself, which only makes it worse.
It's a real powerful manipulation tactic. If I say to my opponent that because you have compromised yourself in this situation, you are no longer trustworthy and therefore irrelevant, and any words that come out of your mouth are no longer feasible or plausible, and there's no reason why anyone should listen to you because you like to have sex with sheep. And the fact that you sleep with sheep
With a
lets
couch,
me know.
have sex with a couch.
Well, a sheep on a couch. I mean, I'm just saying. The point being, if I can show the audience that this person likes to sleep with sheep, it's hard to get that visual out of your mind and listen to what they're saying, even if they're the most brilliant person in the world.
But scandalon, which is the Greek word from which we get scandal or slander, scandal and slander are very difficult to dispel.
Yeah, but do you remember the whole Skull and Bones and Crossbones Society? I think was that Princeton.
It was either, I think it might have been Yale or Harvard.
So when I grew up, it was just common knowledge, the hazing and the fraternity tactics in large academic institutions, where it was known that you publicly humiliate your brothers in the fraternity with something that you know is so disgusting that if anyone knew about it, they would never be able to looked at as a decent person in society. But you hold their secret as a fraternity brother, and you have a career with them where you know their secret, they know your secret, nobody ever talks about it. Like that was common practice when I was growing up as a kid, is if you went to college and you went to a frat, you have to pledge. And if you pledge, they're going to do something. I mean, it's a trope, but it's in, you know that happened.
Oh, well, yeah, blackmail. Basically, it's the blackmail meme or trope.
But it's very effective.
Blackmail is and this was an issue with spies that, in fact, it was part of the Alan Turing story was that he was blackmailable because he was gay, and if it was revealed that he was gay, that would basically end his career, which it did.
Yeah. I think that's what shifted in society, is the ability to blackmail people in this day and age is getting harder and harder because we're not as shocked as we used to be. Like if I said, was it the head of the FBI likes to dress up in women's clothing and run around. Now
Yeah.
it's celebrated.
I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not, but yeah, I knew that there were rumors that
Well, that was it Hoover? What was the guy?
Hoover, yeah, J. Edgar Hoover was either gay or.
But the point is the fact that we say that's a rumor, we have no substantiated claim that he did that. Someone just made that story up and it's stuck. Like right now, if I told you that Richard Gere likes to put gerbils in his butt,
I wouldn't believe it.
but that was a story in the 80s that went around like wildfire and everyone just believed it.
Well, I never heard it, so there you go.
Okay, well, I'm glad you never heard it, Barry, because I grew up with that as common knowledge. You can ask anyone in my age group yeah, I mean, if you're here, Sam, did you ever hear that story?
I didn't get all of that.
Did you ever hear the rumor that Richard Gere likes to put gerbils in his butt?
Oh, that was decades ago. That was being spread.
Yeah, but that's something you heard about. It was
Yes,
it was spread
did.
wide.
I did hear
Yeah.
about it.
So I'm saying once you've created that rumor and that becomes the reality of everyone knows that rumor, it's too late. You're screwed.
Well, as I say, slander and scandal are social phenomena or antisocial phenomena, which are very damaging to the comity of society.
Yeah.
When you realize that, you become cynical. It's ubiquitous, and there's no written, there's no viable defense against it.
Yep. It's a real tactic.
Yeah. And it's unethical. It's a falsehood. And people discover that they can get away with falsehoods and even make a career out of it.
Yeah.
The only ethical way of doing that is to be a fiction writer who writes a novel that's labeled fiction. So everything in this book is made up. But you don't claim that it's true. You claim that it's fiction. And by the way, the opposite of that is to write something and call it a novel when the basic content of the story is really based on real life. It's really true.
Well, that's where it gets tricky, is because when something's a lie, you know it's a lie, it's fiction, but it's based on truths. Then you've got to decipher which parts were the lie, which parts were the truth.
Yeah. And so people will say, don't take any of this at face value. It's all made up. When in fact, a lot of it is inspired by real life. You might change the names and the places of the characters, but the story itself really happened, just to people who I'm not using their real name.
I think that's the interesting part of history, is going back through the stories, finding where the truths are, pulling them out, and separating the actual facts and truths from the fiction.
Children's nursery rhymes were little political jabs. They were making fun of real people, but replacing real people by mice or animals or whatever. But the nursery rhymes were jabs at politicians.
Yep.
And because the children were reciting the nursery rhymes, you can't arrest a child for telling a story, because it's a children's nursery rhyme.
Yeah. The one thing that I learned, just because my dad went to Harvard Divinity School to study a master's degree in comparative religious studies, which gets really old at the dinner table. Like, how many times can I hear the story of Joseph and blah, blah, blah?
It's boring, doesn't it?
It gets a little old after a while, but then it's interesting that in that story, there's specific numbers. And that's what I learned, is like, if you say you're going to reach 72 virgins in heaven, well, are there 72 virgins, or is that an allegory for something else? Is 72 a number that relates to something mathematically to tell a more interesting story?
Yeah. And actually, a lot of numbers, is something called gematria, which is mapping words to numbers. Every word, because in Hebrew, the letters are used for numbers. Every word has a numerical value, which is the sum of the letters. And so two words that have the same numerical value are associated by that fact, even though they're unrelated words. And then you can make up all kinds of interesting little memes out of, like 666 was the name of the number of Nero. If you wrote Nero's name in the correct alphabet, the number added up to 666.
And that trope is still around. He's the devil.
I think it was Caesar Nero in whatever alphabet was 600.
And if we take 360 degrees and divide it by 5, what number do you get?
72.
That's that number they're talking about. So are they talking about virgins, or are they talking about different ways to represent 360 degrees?
I don't know. One in 5 women are virgins. I don't know.
Well, back in those time, everything was, you have 5 here.
Yeah.
So represent, what were the 5 things in ancient Chinese culture? There's the 5 elements: earth, wind, fire, air, ether. So if you go into the hip hop culture, which just got put into the breakdancing, and it's in the top of people's zeitgeist right now, there's 5 elements of hip hop. There's breakdancing, beatboxing, DJing, MCing, and graffiti. That's the 5 elements of that culture. I'm saying a lot of things are broken into 5s because it's an easy number, but at some point it got broken into 6 and became 60 degrees because the Babylonians decided we're going to make a clock of 60.
Yeah.
60 seconds, 60
And also,
minutes.
for all intents and purposes, a year was 360 days.
But you can make a clock of 72.
You can make a clock of anything. It's whatever becomes the commonplace standard, I guess.
Exactly. But with those mathematics, you could extrapolate those mathematics to build a ziggurat in ancient Iraq or Mesopotamia.
Yeah, we're working on a cuckoo clock in the fix-it shop, and we're trying to regulate it because you got to adjust the length of the pendulum to regulate it. And the question was, how many cycles of the pendulum in a minute? Turned out to be 72. And some pendulums run at 1 cycle per second, 60 cycles per minute. This one happened to run at 72, and it has to do with the gear ratios. And it turned out that if you can count exactly 72 cycles in a minute, then your pendulum is running at the right speed, and your clock is going to keep accurate time.
Yeah. Sam just put in the chat wood, fire, metal, earth, water. And what's interesting is there was an overlap between Vedic knowledge from India and Chinese knowledge from China. And those borders were not well defined, 6,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and then you had solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, which were the 4 states of matter.
My point is we keep modeling these things, but there are ancient stories that have those models written into it to pass down through the oral traditions.
People would see the patterns and they'd give the patterns names without having an underlying scientific model that explains the pattern. You can recognize patterns without.
Well, that scientific model was written down. It was just kept sacred or kept secret because the Rosicrucianers and those type of people that were banished from the system and went and started new cultures in other places. But history won't tell you what happened to those people. But the people that know. So it's one of those things where if you read the rule book and you know how to play the game, then you have the power.
People who write autobiographies, the smart ones don't put in their embarrassing flaws in their biography. The ones who want to sell copies will put their embarrassing anecdotes in, then it comes back to bite them.
Or it comes back to raise them up if it is accepted because people are humble and know that they have embarrassments too. And that's one of the ways to gain power. And that's how Trump did it, which a lot of people don't realize is all of his flaws became his greatest assets because all the people that wanted to grab a chick by the pussy went, I want to do that too. I just didn't want to tell anyone.
I'm really down on politics. It's just such a sad aspect of our culture. It's dysfunctional.
Well, I'm excited about it because I don't see the politics of the 90s that is still getting played out today being the politics of the 2040s.
I don't know if I'll be around to see the politics of the 2040s.
I don't know if I'll be around either, but I do know other people will be around to experience
95 years old in 2040, so I don't doubt if I'll still be around at age 95.
Well, I think our very view of life will change drastically when we took all the phone numbers and text information and put it into these little computers in the 80s and 90s. And then now we're going to take all the visual data and put that into the computers moving forward. And all of that information is going to be processed by something. And will it collapse? Maybe, but for a little while, it'll definitely, like when you go to the supermarket, you'd never think about opening the door. It just opens automatically because someone figured that out.
Yeah, I remember the automatic door openers in the 1950s. It was a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And imagine if those automatic door openers are in every door in every house. What's that, Sam?
Eric had posted something, but sorry, I had my audio on.
Oh, no worries.
So,
I'm just saying in just the last 20 years, I've watched the IoT world go from being a novelty to ubiquitous. The Ring doorbells, the cameras, everyone has these, Google, Alexa.
yeah. Yeah, webcams, I mean, really, these tiny little cameras. That's only been around for what, 40 years or something like that?
Yeah, I've got 13 cameras in my car right now. And I can access, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could access 5 of them at any point from anywhere. I just go on the web and say, show me what's going on in the car, and it will show me all 360 degrees around the car.
So, yeah, so technology is still, struggling, but successfully advancing more than our social systems are not advancing like our technologies are.
I think they are. They just take a little more time because people have to experience the lies to the point where we get to debate about what's true and what's not true, and we can argue with each other. And if we stop arguing, that's when the problems happen. As long as we keep arguing about what's true and not true, we're going to be okay.
Uh, I find the arguments banal. Nobody ever changes their mind.
I don't know. I think that if you can meet those people that do change their mind, like Trump changed his mind, he was a Democrat. Why did he stop being a Democrat?
I'm not sure he ever was a Democrat.
He was. He was absolutely was. You can look it up.
Really?
He was at all the parties with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton charged them money. Like, you can look it up. Look up his lifestyle from 1982 to 2005. He was total Democrat.
Mhm.
I think we're going to have some new parties and new government structures in America that are going to look a lot like technocratic bureaucracy.
Well, I can see that certain branches of government are technocracies. NASA's a technocracy. The National
Mhm.
Weather Bureau is a technocracy. The Federal Reserve Board is a technocracy.
Is NOAA a technocracy?
I think so.
National Oceanic.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of technocracies because that's the only way that you can manage them. A lot of transportation systems are run as technocracy. FCC is a technocracy,
Mhm.
but the basic laws that govern the general public are not technocratic. They're traditional statutory laws, and the regulation of statutory laws is very problematic. It's violent, it's erratic, it's unjust. There's a lot of problems with statutory regulations, and they're obsolescent, anachronistic, self-contradictory.
I like to get cynical, but then I remember there was a lot of information in the 90s that was not common knowledge, and now it is. And I'm not saying people are grokking it fully enough to have logical responses to it, but at least they know it exists.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of information that wasn't out to the public. Um, it just reminds me of that when I'm watching that Seinfeld episode. I think 56 million people used to tune into that show, and that was a show that everyone watched together in one place, and that was our worldview. And then fast forward to now, there's hundreds of thousands of shows that everyone's watching in different places. It's a big change in how we receive information, and we have to sort this out in terms of what we believe is the value of entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, people are probably becoming more discriminatory about what they consider um, an entertainment value. Well, if you lived in a small town in the rural country, nothing's happening, entertainment was a big deal, and the circus comes to town or something like that. now, you know, you can turn on the internet and find a large selection of options to attend to, some of which are quality entertainment, some of which is just rather pedestrian entertainment.
And there's movements that are happening quietly with hundreds of thousands of people that we don't hear about. We won't hear about for a few more years. But there's large groups of people doing really amazing things that are taking shape and taking form, and communities forming around that. It's just amazing, you know. Like I just watched the philanthropy arm of Mr. Beast on YouTube putting different Starlink systems and solar into different villages in Africa. And then the movements that grow around those villages of other people saying, hey, they posted to TikTok, they got heard, they got their needs met. I'm going to do the same. And this is not a small population in Africa. There's a lot of people that live on that continent. A lot more than America.
Maybe they'll improve their rate of general education as a result of information technologies.
They already have. Yeah. The education.
They won't all
has,
become Nigerian prince scammers. Some of them
well,
will.
the fact that we think that about Africa, there's so much more richness in Africa. Like there's some wonderfully thriving cultures. I mean, take a look at what South Africa is now for what it was 20 years ago. It's a different place. So anyway, we should probably wrap it up, right? It's getting.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes after the second hour, so I tend to get depleted about after 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me rant, Barry. I appreciate the time to rant.
Okay, well, enjoy your ranting.
I'm gonna rant. I'm gonna keep on my optimism thing until. And when you see me cynical, please lift me up and inspire me, because
I'll probably empathize with your cynicism.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Cheers. Bye, Sam.
Good week.
Bye, Barry.